God wants us to experience a life of generosity, so we need to have a plan and a process that will help us to get there. So I have an illustration for you that I'd like to share that I think really nicely describes the process that we go through in growing in our generosity, becoming the generous givers that God wants us to become. I first saw this generosity ladder, if you will. A pastor named Nelson Searcy is the first person I saw use it. I've seen a lot of people use it since then. I really like it because I think it really nicely describes this process. Every church, this one included, has people that are in a different place in their journey of generosity. All of us are at a different step, and this, I think, illustrates that nicely. By the way, toward the bottom of this generosity ladder, there is financial stress. And as you move toward the top, there's financial peace. All those in favor of financial peace in your life, say aye. Yeah, right? I mean, we'd love to know the peace of God as it relates to our finances. So, this church and virtually every other church, I'm sure, has people like this. You're in this church, you love what the Lord is doing here, you think it's fantastic, but you have not yet begun to give financially here. So what would the first step on the generosity ladder be for you? It would be to become a first-time giver. A first-time giver. Now, I want you to keep in mind, becoming a first-time giver is not just a financial decision. This is a spiritual decision. This is a big deal. This is a person who is saying, I am moving toward the Lord, recognizing that generosity is part of spiritual formation. And you know what they're doing, by the way, when someone gives for the very first time? Imagine this. They're going to put their name and their address on a check and put it in the offering. Or they're going to use their debit card that has their name and their account number, and they're going to use it to give online. This is a big deal for people, and it should be. I asked Mark Tidwell, who of course is the executive minister here at Oak Hills, I was curious, I wondered if he could put together a count of the number of people who have given here at Oak Hills for the very first time in the past 60 days. You know what that number was? The number of people who took this financial and spiritual decision? 205 people. Isn't that fantastic? I mean, I just think that is so great. 205 people that are saying, I'm here, and I want to be a part of this church by giving back to the Lord a portion of what He's entrusted to me. That's the first step in the generosity ladder. After you become a first-time giver, your next step might be to become an occasional giver. An occasional giver gives occasionally. They give sometimes when the offering is passed. They might give a different amount each time. Some weeks they do give, some weeks they don't give. There's not really a plan there, but they're moving in the right direction. The next step for a person who's an occasional giver would be to become an intentional giver. Now, here's a person who has decided, I am going to sit down, perhaps at my kitchen table or something like that, and I'm going to try to figure out what portion of the resources that God has entrusted to me do I want to give back to the church, back to the kingdom. Now, it might be a fixed dollar amount that they choose. It could be a percentage of their income, but they're going to try to do that in an intentional, really purposeful way. If they get paid every other Friday, maybe they give twice a month like that. Notice, by the way, I haven't necessarily said that this is a tithe or 10% of your giving. That's the next step in this generosity ladder. To believe that the biblical principle of giving the first 10% of what God has entrusted to you back to Him, back to the kingdom, back to the church. A person who is becoming a tither is recognizing that they want to experience the peace of God, the blessing of God in their life, and they're going to entrust back to the Lord 10% of what He has given to them. Now, for some of us, this would be a big step to get to. For others of us, we've sort of believed that this is the finish line. We sort of feel like, look, I'm tithing, so I'm done, right? But there actually is another step in this journey of generosity, on this generosity ladder. And that's to go from being a tither to being an extravagant giver. Even beyond the tithe. For many of us, even well beyond the tithe. Many times, the extravagant giver is the person who is not now saying, Lord, what portion of your resources do you want me to give? Instead, the extravagant giver is saying something like this, Lord, what portion of what you've entrusted to me do you want me to keep? I'm going to give away the rest because I trust you and I believe in you and I want to experience that blessing and peace in my life.